Okay, I'm Guy McPherson with the Nature Bat's Last YouTube channel, which you already know or you wouldn't be here. We're going to talk about a wide variety of topics today. I'm here with psychologist Peter Miller. And first, Peter, I'd like you to tell us about your free course and maybe spend 30 seconds or so talking about the material that's in the course and how it might apply to anybody, even people who think they have no emotional problems.
Sure. Well, I'm very psyched to say that. I mean, the enrollments are now up to about 58, give or take. I mean, since I've been speaking with Guy in these sessions, I think we've gone up at least 30 to 40 registrations. So that is, inspiring to me as a therapist, because I know that how lacking the understanding of this material is in the world in general. And for good reason. We are not in a context that promotes or prioritizes highly health and wellness, and particularly mental health and wellness. It is typically bottom of the barrel. People will wait until they have the worst possible symptoms and unraveling family dynamics and disaster and chaos until they come and ask us some questions. So, I mean, I've learned along the way that, I mean, if we can be proactive and preventative, that is much more effective than waiting until the last minute, until literally people are stabbing themselves in the neck with a knife in front of their family and blood is spewing all over the place. I mean, that's just one small story. Okay. Like, so I mean, things can get rather abysmal. Things can get rather ugly. I mean, when mental health is neglected for long enough. I mean, think about it for just a little. Like, if you neglected brushing your teeth for like 2 months, and the pain of some like abscess or some rotting or some cavity started affecting you, like how insane would you become, right? After you didn't brush your teeth maybe on one side for like 3 or 4 months. Think about that.
Yeah, that's
So
an experiment anybody can try at home. Brush only on one side.
try it. I dare you, right? I dare you, and see how it feels to neglect that part of your health. So, I mean, when I am meeting with people, I'm often discovering, wow, you've never known anything about this. This is an important part of our health that we neglect in this culture, and people end up doing and saying and things and behaving in ways that are very self-destructive and destructive to their families, and that involve like the police and emergency services. And it really doesn't have to get that bad. Like, it truly does not have to get that bad if we would educate ourselves and start practicing some things earlier in life. When I was listening to Gabor Mate, he's one of my favorite authors and dudes in psychiatry. And he has a video about, literally, it says why capitalism makes us sick. And it's basically all just about neglect, right? Like, so we're so hyper focused on capitalism that we neglect this important part of our health. And we also neglect important parts of parenting and what children need in critical periods of their brain development, right? So it's all fucked up and neglected now because we're so hyper focused on money and capitalism. And it's been that way, I guess, since the Industrial Revolution or thereabouts. So he's the person to listen to if you are genuinely interested in the context and how it all affects us. And similar how I think about all this stuff. And how I've written about it in my own personal writings. And in the course that I have, I think there's 72 PowerPoint slides. There's 110 supplementary videos I made. Like, I made an emotional vocabulary flashcard set. It's big, but to develop emotional intelligence, which is something that we're also lacking. So the course that I have includes a lot of these tools and materials and other places that you can turn to. Like, if you don't like the way I talk about it, you could go like listen to Debbie Corso or or others. There's many others like me who are concerned in a similar way. But like, it's all just about trying to build awareness and help people understand that it's like this enlightenment that you need to have. You do not live in a culture that cares about your brain or about your brain health or about your mental health. It does not. It only cares about like the bottom line, making more money. Your brain does not matter, like your health does not matter. Like maybe they want you to get good in a certain field so you can perform a certain task and provide a certain product. But as far as your regular health goes, they don't give a shit. And so people like me who have been in the industry for a while and seen these repeating patterns, we want to say, hey, like, don't believe that kind of hype. Like your health has been neglected probably since childhood, and you need to do something to get better informed and start some practices so that you can have a better overall brain dynamic and functioning so you can be more rational and be more sane in your relationships. Like one of my favorite authors too, Scott Peck, The Road Less Traveled, he said in his first sentence in his book, The Road Less Traveled, he said, life is hard, right? So it is, but we make it way harder than it needs to be by our not knowing how to be healthy. So go to freebpdcourse.com and get started on something to learn a little bit more about yourself and your family members who might be suffering and who you may be punishing them for being unhealthy. People often punish the unhealthy because they don't understand it, right? So they think if I'm mean enough to them, if I threaten them enough, then maybe they'll get healthy, right? That's not going to work. You need to understand mental health. You need to understand the context and get some ways of interacting with people that actually help them come out of the abyss.
Right.
So hopefully that's a good nutshell explanation today.
Speaking of Gabor Mate, he says something in response to palliative care or hospice care that I think applies also to the work I do. He says, quote, accepting inevitability, end quote. If we accept what is inevitable, then we can proceed with mental health. But you're talking about issues that are not inevitable, right? And so in those cases, it makes perfect sense to pursue help.
Not inevitable. Say more. What you mean there? Sorry.
So Mate was talking about palliative care.
Yes.
It's too late. We know the patient is going to die.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know whether it's going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but we know it's going to be pretty soon. So his line for that is accepting inevitability. We must accept what is inevitable. All of us are going to die.
Yes.
All of us are going to develop certain problems as we get older and so on. So accepting inevitability is one thing, but that's not what you're talking about. You're not talking about it's inevitable that we're all going to have these horrible dysfunctions in our lives. No,
it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And there's something that comes from Seneca that forms the basis for modern Stoicism. Seneca wrote something like, there are things over which we have control and things over which we don't. And we need to focus on the things that we have control over and let the other stuff just slip away. We don't have control over a whole bunch of things that happen to us in our lives.
Yeah.
But there are things over which we do have control. That's where we need to focus.
Yes. And I guess what the course offers is some of those things where you could do like something where you could actually have a bit of, you could make a bit of change in the patterns of your mental health and relationships. And for real, like it's like, if you want life to stay the exact same, if it's going if it's very hard, and people are like, almost giving up on each other or have given up on each other, like it doesn't have to be that bad. It just takes a little bit of humility and being willing to learn what you never learned when you were a kid. So I guess that's, the big push for why I'm meeting with Guy for these sessions, in addition to talking about many other interesting things, is, get informed, even just a little informed about what you didn't learn in childhood. Like I almost can guarantee you didn't learn almost anything about mental health when you were a kid, and your parents probably didn't know anything either. They did the best that they could, and they made a lot of accidental errors, and so your brain development was compromised, and you were left with living out certain kinds of patterns just as a means of survival, but they actually hurt you in the long run. So,
and let me give an example, a personal example.
yeah.
When I was a kid, there were just things we never talked about. And it probably had something to do with my parents being very young when they had kids, right? My mom was 23, my dad was 24 when they had 3 kids. I can't even imagine, right? That's so young. Those 23, you're a child. And so some of the topics that were just off limits when I was a kid were sex. We never talked about sex. Nobody ever had sex. As nearly as I can tell, nobody had sex until I was like 16 years old. That just didn't happen. Nobody
Right.
ever.
Right.
Drugs, we never talked about drugs. Illicit drugs, we would never talk about those things. Never
Yeah.
mind that there was a pandemic of drug problems when I was growing up as a kid in northern Idaho. We just didn't talk about it. And bodily functions, that's like the worst thing you could talk about, right? And so these are things that happen that affect everybody's lives every day, and we never talk about it. So I went to a medical doctor. This is when I was a kid. This is like I was less than 10 years old. And the medical doctor, or maybe the nurse, asked if I had a bowel movement every day. And I looked at my mom like, he can't ask me that question. We don't talk about that kind of thing. We never talk about this. He can't ask me that.
Right.
And my mom just turns to me and she says something like, well, you would know that better than me. You tell him. I'm like, no, this is just off limits.
You're not supposed to ask those questions. Yeah.
Right. And so now I realize that was insane. That's a perfectly legitimate question for a doctor or a parent to ask.
Mm-hmm.
But we just never went there. Bodily functions, totally off the table. I mean,
Yeah.
how sick do you have to be before you can raise the issue that I've had severe diarrhea for 4 days, right? We would never mention that.
Right. No. And I think it's basically you're referring to that emotional ineptness, like people don't want to feel awkward, they don't want to feel uncomfortable, they don't want to feel other things, right? So if a topic generates those kinds of feelings, they don't want to do it. And often what I say to people in my practice is like, okay, so this is some of the feeling areas that you're very unskilled and weak in, right? So let's practice feeling some of these feelings so that you can get more accomplished and confident that you can process and work through this kind of emotional content. But I mean, have you in all your childhood, did you ever hear anything like that? Like, oh, okay, this is the kind of emotion you're experiencing now, and it's okay, it's natural, it's normal, it's related to this type of thinking you're having. And you can totally do it. It's understandable. Like, we can work through this and it'll pass. And we can think about this in other ways. Like, did you ever hear anything like that?
No, of course not. Nothing like that. Nope. As nearly as I can tell, nobody ever got sick, and certainly nobody ever died. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting because when I was 11, my grandmother died, and I grieved for a long time. And that's weird because I didn't even know this person, right? We saw her maybe once a year, and I was 11. So I'd seen her within my memory at most 8 times for a day or two. And I cried for a week, and it took me a long time to figure out that I was not crying about her because I didn't even know her. I was crying about me. Yeah, when I was 11, I finally figured out that I too am going to die. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother's death was just a reminder of that.
So it triggered that existential anxiety.
Right. And I didn't know how to deal with that. In my family, nobody ever died. So it never came up as dinner time conversation or any time conversation for that matter. And then I heard Terry Jacks's version of Seasons in the Sun when I was 14. That's when it came out. So I heard it all the time. And And that was reinforcement.
I listened to that. It's a great tune, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I added it to my playlist.
Everybody died.
Yeah.
Right, everybody dies. That's sort of one of the messages, and the song is about being the black sheep of the family, and that certainly fit me then and now, in part because I talk about such horrible things as death
Mhm.
and other taboo topics.
Right. How dare you talk about a topic that could ignite a feeling of discomfort, right?
Right.
Because certain feelings are off limits, right? We're only supposed to have a happy
Yes.
most of the time, and to be we're supposed to be optimistic and positive. It's like toxic positivity, right? Where you're always supposed to be positive. So you can't be totally human because you're always, you
Right.
know,
Right.
actually, I like the Joker version. It seems more forceful.
I think the Joker probably was the classic example of toxic positivity, wasn't he?
Well, I think he was in a war within himself with that concept. But yeah, yeah,
Right.
like he was trying to. I think he was doing a lot of that self-invalidation. I shouldn't feel this way. I should just be happy like everybody else. And yeah, look where that led him and his behavior.
And it makes you wonder if the writers knew about that sort of thing. You know, I'm reminded of the kinds of things that surprise me that writers know about. When I saw the what was it, 2021 film Finch.
Yeah.
Um, and it's pretty clear that the writers knew about nuclear power plants melting down and the radiation that escaped causing the stripping away of stratospheric ozone, because they would have a character put their hand out in the sun and it would immediately burn to a crisp. That doesn't happen on this planet, but it would if we stripped away the stratospheric ozone, which otherwise protects us. And so in that world, when some of the nuclear power plants had melted down, it led to this thing that I'm guessing most people watching the movie didn't even know what was happening,
Yeah.
because they don't mention it. They don't describe why this is happening, but just every time somebody goes out in the sun, they burn to a crisp.
Yeah, I remember that scene particularly, actually. Yeah, so he was saying, yeah, they were going into a trailer, and he was saying that you can't
Right.
put your hand out for too long or it'll burn.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, or you can't
And
expose your skin or whatever. Yeah.
so how did the writers know about that? And they did it so subtly in the film that I'm guessing a lot of people who watched it just missed it, or didn't think about why the sunburn is happening so quickly, right?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
as nearly as I can recall, they didn't ever explain it. It just
Right,
was something that happened, as if everybody's supposed to know about it.
right. Yeah, it'd be nice if, yeah, if that could be more obvious, like we know what's going on in some of these films. I
Right.
guess, but as the viewer, we're left to just try and figure it out, which most people probably don't, right? Like,
Right.
what the overall explanation is.
Right. So most viewers do what I did. They move on to a happier movie.
Right, right. No, it's so in general, as a culture, yeah, we're supposed to try and steer away from the negative emotion as much as possible. We're not supposed to fully experience it, process it, and ponder, what's underlying it, right? Like,
Right.
I definitely think we're in a toxic positivity, and we have been for a long time. And maybe that's what, our parents were trying to do as well. It's like, hey, you just don't, if it isn't in the positive realm, if it's in the realm of like disappointment or sad or unfortunate or scary, you stay away from it because it's not positive, right? And the only thing that actually makes money in this world is positive. So
Isn't that the truth?
uh,
And that's what the whole
yeah,
thing is about, right? That's what the whole culture is about, is making money.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not a winner until you have a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like it's hope and optimism. Basically, um, American dream, hope, optimism. You basically you prevail at all at all odds, right? I just watched another movie last night about a lady swimmer, Nayad, I think was her name. Anyway, it was another American Dream film, but she, whatever, she swam from Cuba to Florida, and it was a big deal. You ever heard of her? Nayad? No.
No.
NYAD. Anyway, but it's just sort of, I mean, it is amazing that she accomplished that, but at the same time, it's sort of reinforcing just the American dream concept, right? Like all you got to do, is pursue your dream, and that's the most important thing. And any like cost or expense or anything that you, as a byproduct of what you do, is not important. All that matters is that you achieve your dream.
Right. Right.
And I think in our conversations, we're like, no, those byproducts and those things that you do as a consequence of pursuing your dream fucking matter, right? Because it hurts the rest of us. Or it can.
And what you're describing is the new American dream, the original version of the American dream, proposed by James Treslow Adams.
Yes, it's good to remember that. Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm always talking about the warped, demented American dream.
Right.
The one that I grew up with.
Right, and apparently has spread throughout the world.
Like all I've ever known is that like Canadians are basically American wannabes, if you ask me. Like it's like if you're not pursuing some kind of dream and you're not realizing it and you're not making big fat stacks, then you're a loser, basically. Or you're just low class. I don't know if that's overly simplistic. That's what I took from my childhood.
Right.
Because down the street was one of my friends, his dad was a dentist, and he had it seemed like limitless cash to just do whatever he wanted, right? And I was like, that's a winner. That's what a winner is. You can get like the best motorhome, you can go on skiing trips, you can go all over the world and do other stuff, and you can pamper your kids with all the latest shit. That is a winner. And that's what I need to be. And if I'm not that, I'm a loser.
Right? And yet, I read when I was a kid, I don't know if this still holds or not. I think I was probably in college, maybe in early graduate school. I read that the highest suicide rate in this country is for dentists.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make a lot of money, but they do the same thing every day, probing around in other people's rotten teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, can that be fun? Really?
I guess not. I guess any job can get monotonous and repetitive. As I say, it's all McDonald's. That's what Jim Gaffigan says in his comedy series.
Right.
He says it's all McDonald's, because you basically end up doing the same shit every day, even if you're a neurosurgeon, right? Like,
right.
You just sort of serve up the same combo of services, right?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Because there are a few exceptions. There are a couple that I can think of. As a professor, you get to do the work you want to do, and that can change radically over time. You don't need to focus on, most professors do, they just keep focusing more and more narrowly on a topic. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I don't know, it's hard to think of additional examples, although there must be some. Right?
Yeah, I mean, certain fields, I guess you wouldn't be in that McDonald's paradigm, right? Where you could be really challenging your intellect and breaking new ground and stuff like that. And that would be probably more fulfilling, right? Like,
sure.
But if you're just going to do like knee replacements or hip replacements or like heart surgery or whatever,
right?
Like, or if you're going to work with people on their mental health, like I feel like I'm doing the same shit every day, like, because I mean, people experience the same problems over and over and over and over and over. Right? Like, it's like that's the world we live in. It's repeating memes, repeating patterns, repeating ailments.
Right.
That's the world we live in.
And so when I was on campus, I used to have to remind myself that it's about reaching one student. If I can reach one student in an entire class for an entire semester and change the way they think about something, including themselves or the world, then that's success. So yes, it felt like I was doing the same thing, teaching the same courses over and over. But, I think our expectations are influenced by popular culture, by the movies we watch, the books we read, which are all about somebody making $1 billion, right? I mean, that's winning in this culture, is the person who makes $1 billion and gets to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But in real life, maybe our successes should be measured a little more realistically, with the ability to reach one person during an entire semester or an entire life.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But if I keep watching all these American Dream films, how is my thinking not supposed to be so bombastic? Right? Like,
Right.
I keep watching, I grew up on all these films it's just like American Dream films. And I didn't know it at the time, right? Like, but it's just bizarre how we get indoctrinated into that like mindset of and you were too with your parents, right? You said they said be the best.
Right.
Basically be the best, stand out, make lots of money, have lots of privilege, and and then you can be so awesome that you can share that privilege with people, right? Be a philanthropist, right? And then you
Right.
even get your status even goes even higher because you're such a philanthropist. uh, uh, so like, yeah, I mean, pardon me. I mean, where does this leave us? We're talking about like not wanting to talk about certain subjects, the kind of a phobia of certain things, in particular, I guess, like things like death, um,
Right.
and all other topics that could induce unwanted feelings. I mean, isn't this a big part of what led us down this path to extinction? Sort of how this type of cultural framework took over. I mean,
Yes.
that's what intrigues me the most, is like how the psychology connects to, I guess, repeating patterns with billions of people, and then how it actually links to what you see with your work. Like you see the ultimate outcome of what all these people and all these decisions, right, based on how they're thinking about life. And then you see the ultimate outcome, which is
Right.
disastrous.
Right. Right. I mean, everybody rapidly pursuing the next dollar, the next $10,000, the next $1 million.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we got here. Because if you're thinking about just your own privilege and the privilege maybe of your family, and the rest of the world be damned, including the people of the world, well, that can only end up one way.
Yeah.
And
So
we're
it's this hyper individualism, right? Like,
right.
like maybe cultures in the past before us, uh I don't know what you want to call us Euro white types. I don't know. We took over, right? The British took over, and I don't know if it's ever been different since then. Like, it's been this world domination paradigm. And am I right in saying that cultures previous to the white Euro colonial way of trying to be human were the cultures previous to that more collective and more willing to talk about these things, more willing to talk about all things, more willing to feel emotions, so that we could actually ponder, we could actually be in reality.
Right.
Like,
Yes. For example, there's little question that there is the same percentage, the same level of sociopathy in other cultures as there is in ours. But you couldn't get away with that in a tribe, a group, a band of people where everybody knows everybody, right? So if somebody acts like a sociopath, they get asked to take the long walk late at night on a cold night, right? They don't get to stick around. In this culture, it's rewarded.
like the reverse is just
Absolutely. We find some way to reward the sociopaths instead of getting rid of them. So there's little doubt that in those previous cultures, there was the same percentage of sick people. I mean, seriously mentally ill, but it couldn't be expressed. Everybody knew that it couldn't be expressed. You didn't walk around with a handgun saying, I'm going to shoot everybody, right? Because that would last exactly one day, and then you'd be either gone or dead. Those would be your options.
Mm-hmm.
And in this society, anything goes.
Well,
More than 8 billion people on the planet, whatever.
so if something was an aberration, something was actually going to be toxic to the whole, they tried to get rid of it. And now we look at an aberration as normal. And I think specifically the word greed applies. Like, and I think religion has played a big role in normalizing greed. Like it's like, oh, it's just normal. It's just part of, it's because the evil influences around us and it's influencing us to be greedy. So we're all subject to be greedy. That to me is a big lie. Like I like the other explanation that you said, where it's just like it's an illness, it's an aberration. If a person is behaving and thinking in those ways, they need to stop entirely or leave the tribe, right?
Right.
Instead of us saying, "Oh, it's just normal part of human life."
So what
No,
was the movie?
it's not.
What was the movie where the man said greed is good? I think it was
Oh,
that
yeah,
Wall Street. Is that the
yeah,
name?
yeah. I think that was the movie. Yeah,
Wall Street. Yeah. Greed is good.
yeah.
Yeah.
No.
That
Well,
was
it's
relatively
yeah.
recent.
It's not only normal now; it's good because it like
Right.
actually whatever it helps move the economy along. Like that is the highest level of perversity I can think of. Like oh, I think even just some switches in thinking and wording, like if you said no greed, well, first you say no. Like
Right.
people don't, one of my favorite comics is Bill Burr, and he says he does that a lot. He'll go, no, no. It's not like that, right? Like he does that a lot of, he won't just go passively. He says no. It's like this is what it is, and this is what you're missing. And I think we need to call an aberration
Right.
instead of continually saying yes that it's normal. We say no, it's not.
Right. Right. We've normalized all this bad behavior.
Because we just so apathetic and passive. We just go along with the dominant whatever they tell us, right? Like I think we got to be more like Bill Burr. We got to say fuck no. You got to get good at that word. No, I was in a breath work, health and wellness
Hmm?
thing, and my good buddy, he's good at this practice, right? And I'm in this breathing cycle, right? And I'm in this altered state, and he actually wanted me to yell out the word no, and I was I was pushing on his hands, and I'm yelling the word no, right? Like no, like so it was very liberating actually,
Hmm.
because I'm like
Hmm.
all of the conditioning that I just think is proper and normal, I'm able to finally have a bit of assertiveness and say like no to the things where I need to say no. I think that's what us black sheep are kind of like. It's our mojo. Like we're willing to say no to the things
Right.
that need to say no, and other people they stay apathetic and passive.
And it happens with me a lot. I get more than 200 email messages every day. And I don't have the time in my life to answer them all.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, I say no. I just delete them. I move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
my time in my life matters
Mm-hmm.
too.
Right. No, for sure. You gotta have, it's called boundaries, right? And
Right.
so you have to have healthy boundaries. But I mean, also when you're in discussion with people who are saying things are normal, I think if we're gonna stand up for being human, we need to be willing to say no when we're in those discussions. And I'm kind of fiercely saying no in a lot of cases now. And I'm like, no, that is not the only interpretation. That is not the only way of looking at things. And
Right.
my interpretation makes some sense too, has some validity. It's not just yours. And
Right.
like talk about going against the word sane, right? And you said people are using that word same a lot as a meme.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Taggers, graffiti writers use it because they interpret everything as being the same in this entire culture. Everybody does the same things. Everybody pursues the next dollar, right?
right.
Everybody wants the same material possessions. Same, same, same.
Yeah. So let's all go down the rabbit hole. and experience all the same illness too, right? Like when it isn't needed, it isn't needed. Like life is hard. We don't have to make it harder. But again, reference to my course, if you want life to be not harder than it needs to be, check it out. And even I think if you even invest time in studying Guy's work, like you'll start to kind of get a sense of that theme, that we're on a certain sort of theme, wouldn't you say? Like that we're not passively just accepting what the mainstream says. There's a heavy kind of rebel element to it, but it's not just like an idiot kid rebellion. Like we're learned people. Like Guy studied for years in his field. I've studied for years in mine, right? It's not coming out of just like out of our ass. Like
right. We didn't just make this up.
No. And it's funny and also infuriating when you see mainstream people who will ignore some of the important facts to keep their narrative going, like Michael Mann, for example. Right? Like,
oh yeah.
Like, why do you just have to keep ignoring some of the like fact? Like he's ignoring facts, is he not? Like,
he's ignoring facts that he discovered, along with the facts that other people discovered. He's famous for being the lead author on the paper in Nature that demonstrated the hockey stick exponential increase in global average temperature. He's famous for that.
mm-hmm.
And now he denies that it exists.
So when it's convenient, ignore certain facts, right? And
right.
This is what right-wing political people do all the time, and maybe people on the left do it sometimes. I don't know, but it's like when you're trying to make an argument, you ignore certain facts. I mean, but if you're actually if you're gonna be an intellectual and you're gonna try and be mature, then you can't do that. Right? You can't just ignore certain things to make a point and try and win a certain audience over. That's just basically being a liar.
Yes. Yes, and there are a variety of ways that we can lie. We can lie by omission, by failing to admit some of the key pieces of information, or we can lie by commission, in which we just flat out tell an untruth about ourselves or somebody else, right? So there are various ways that climate scientists, media outlets, and government officials lie. Mostly it's by omission. Mostly they're just not telling us what's going on in the world. And thus the glossy coating, the expectation that everybody wants the same thing. By that I mean everybody wants the same money.
And you know what happens? You know what really people don't like about what we're doing, I think, is that if we are exposing truths, if we're like saying, no, you can't keep hiding from this truth, right? Like this is what it is. Like when you are faced with the truth, then what's required is usually some sacrifices, some work. And you can't get out of it. And they want to get out of it, right? They don't want to have to spend that money. They don't want to have to take that time. They don't want to have to admit that they were ignoring certain things and lying, right? Like for instance, like I have recently discovered some health issues that I'm facing, and I can't lie to myself. It's like, okay, I have to take some time to deal with this, and it's in the realm of weight gain, and I have to deal with it. If I keep telling myself, no, it's no problem, it'll all be fine, just carry on and just keep doing what you're doing, and all sort of stuff, that's a lie. Like I need to like change my habits. I need to like exercise more, right? And that's what I'm doing now.
Well, because I would argue that most lies begin by lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
If I can lie to myself, then I can lie to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's a variety of reasons for doing that. This makes me feel good to lie to myself. Go ahead. I'm in perfect health. I don't need to do a thing.
Right. Well, yeah. So that's often a lie. And since I faced my lie, now I'm spending 3 hours walking a day, and I'm drinking 2 gallons of water, and I'm counting calories somewhat, right? Like, so I'm having to put in some work. I'm having to actually do what needs to be done.
If I drank 2 gallons of water every day, I would walk 3 miles going back and forth to the bathroom.
Well, it's actually been weird. I've drank lots of water, but it hasn't changed my urinary patterns. I don't know. I'm just saying
Wow.
it's weird. It's weird.
Huh.
But anyway, like in 1 week I've lost 10 pounds, I'm happy to say, because I've been walking like my ass off. But you
Literally.
know, literally. And it's been uncomfortable. I've had a splint on my knee, I've had splints on my feet, and I'm just walking, right? I'm like, because I said to myself, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm not just going to like become immobile and so stiff and so fat that I can't even function. I'm not going to do it, right? So but it's the same with like the collective, isn't it? Like it's what we're doing. We lie to ourselves so much that we don't have to face the realities, and then we just keep heaping on the consequences. It's just like this. It's just like a person, like an individual in a toxic mental state, right? They just keep denying and denying and denying until they can't deny anymore. And I think
Right.
that's what you've been saying with your work. Like, we've been denying for so long that it's like now there probably is no recovery.
Right. Right. But there are things we can do as individuals that maintain our own personal, emotional, and mental health.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why these are important conversations that we are having, is because I don't want to be accused one more time of causing somebody else's suicide.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah.
Because I am interested in the emotional health of individual human beings, especially my friends.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I
oh,
mean, like, while the world is on a crash course, in the meantime, we still have space to be sane, and we can learn enough to be sane, and we have enough space to probably prop up our physical health, right? So I mean, while the ship is going down, we don't have to give up along the way. I think that's what
right.
you're
Right. If we're on the Titanic, we don't have to go to the bar and drink our way to the bottom of the sea.
saying. Right.
Right. We can take care of ourselves, and we don't know exactly how long we have left. And besides which, it, depending upon your perspective and how you treat your own life, an hour can be a long time. A day can be a lifetime. A year, that's essentially forever. And how we treat ourselves and other people in those relatively short periods of time defines us, defines who we
Mhm.
are when we are in our latter stages, maybe. We don't know. But in
Mhm.
any event, you don't, just because we are headed for human extinction, thereby joining 8 other species in the genus Homo to have gone extinct so far, thereby joining 99.9% of the species that have ever occupied the planet so far in going to extinction. That doesn't mean we have to be complete jerks on the way out the door, right?
No, no.
And we can treat ourselves and the people in our lives in a decent manner, no matter what is coming and how soon it comes.
So, yeah, it is. So it sounds like you're saying it's really just what we're all going through with this whole collapsing is normal. I think that's one thing that we could say is normal based on what you're saying. Previous extinctions and other species going extinct is just part of the life cycle, I guess, right? It's
Right.
just what it is.
Hey,
Um,
hey,
mhm.
everybody dies.
Everybody does, yeah.
I know it's a big secret, but
I mean, I guess where we are culpable is that in our culture we probably sped it up, right? But
right, yes, of
we did
course.
we did speed it up. It probably doesn't have to be this fast, but
But that's all of us. That's not you, that's not me, right? Yeah, I can't, if I only wish that I could say every day, oh man, if it weren't for Peter Miller, we'd have a long run ahead of us. Because then I'd have somebody to blame,
yeah,
right? And that's what a whole lot of people are looking for, is just somebody else to blame. But no, we did this all together, all of us
we
working
did.
the same direction.
Sometimes people say that the people with the bigger levers have more accountability, like
Well,
ExxonMobil,
of
for
course.
example. They have a much bigger lever than Peter Miller.
Yes, of
Right.
course. I couldn't agree more. And the fossil fuel companies have known for a long time where we're headed, and they haven't done anything about it. But so what? That's one of the many things over which I have no control at all. I could spend a lot of my time worrying, being anxious, being irritated about those kinds of things. Would that help? Would that help my mental health? I don't think so. So some of the stuff yes, I know who's responsible, and it's not you, damn it, and it's not me, damn it. But it doesn't do any good for me to focus on that sort of thing.
Can I just add one thing as a mental health person? So
Sure.
I hear what you're saying, like, because I mean, you do what a lot of people do, which is kind of go straight for the logic, right? So all I want to add, and this is one of the big epiphanies I had in my life and as a therapist, is that if you want to get to the logic, you got to work through the emotions first. So if you feel frustrated about ExxonMobil and you feel a bit bitter, it's okay and it's understandable that you feel that way. So like validate those emotions and then kind of then go into the kind of the logic that Guy was saying. But
Of
people
course.
often, what happens is people skip over the emotion and then they just try to go to the logic, but then it doesn't actually help them stay logical because they skipped over the emotion. So I just want to make sure
Right.
I add that in our
Right.
discussion.
No, that's an excellent point. Yes,
Yeah.
we are humans. We feel things, like it or
Yeah,
not.
yes. And in order to be logical, we need to actually be with our emotions. And I think that's what any therapist would tell you. And they'd say, stop skipping over the emotions,
I
basically,
was
right?
I was hosted in Winnipeg, Canada, to attend a series of meditations on death and dying by a lama in a Buddhist temple that he had started. And so we spent several days there doing meditations, and he brought in somebody who's the world authority on meditations from British Columbia, blah, blah, blah. And so we were working through this stuff, and we were taking breaks every day, 2 or 3 breaks a day. And everybody else would put on all their clothes because it was really cold. It was the entire time I was there, it was colder than the surface of Mars the whole time. It
Nice.
was, and this is shortly after Canada had put a bunch of plastic in their bills, in their dollar bills, their currency,
Oh, okay,
and they were all
yeah.
falling apart. Right? People were losing a lot of money because it was just disintegrating. And the infrastructure was being severely tested and pipes were breaking all over town, blah, blah, blah. And everybody else would take 10 minutes to put on all their clothes. They'd go outside for 2 minutes and then they have to spend the next 10 minutes getting out of their clothes. I just went out of the room in my shirt sleeves. And people are like, are you insane? What is wrong with you? And I said, I thought the whole point of this thing was to feel it all.
Nice.
That's Buddhism in a nutshell. I just
Yes.
want to feel it. And they're
Yes.
like, this guy's out of his mind. This guy's
Yeah, I mean that if you want to actually just one of the big nuggets for mental health is being willing to feel things and taking the time to do so with yourself and with others. That's what we often skip over because we're in such a rush to get to the outcome, get to the goal, make the dollar. There really isn't much time allotted for health and wellness. It just isn't good for money. It's not good for business. It slows down production.
right, right. We can't have that.
That I mean, that's probably why, like, business people wouldn't like me very much because I'm like, no, slow down.
Right.
Like take the time to actually be human, then I'm going to slow down your production. Sorry. So there you go.
I think that's a fine place to wrap. I want you to do 2 things before we turn off the recording here. I want you to show us your shirt
Oh
and
yes.
pitch your band and their songs. So the
Yes.
band.
Yes. So yes, this is the logo for my band Live Avenger, and we've been making some music now. We got 2 singles out, and it's kind of inspired by well, everything I've learned in life and with Guy, and just being a rebel in general. And yeah, we got a string of songs that are going to be coming out in the next year or 2 as we have time to finish and release them. But there's 2 available now on YouTube and the other streaming services. Check them out.
And
I
and
also
and
have a couple of
one of them just came out a couple of days ago on YouTube, right? And you did the
yes.
video for that one, which is amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, I think I call it image play because it's not really like a fancy video. It's more like a slideshow. But anyway, those are on YouTube as well, and hopefully representative of the lyrics somewhat, and just having fun, being human. And we're reflecting on what it feels like to be human in the music. And it's we were saying that we were going to be a punk band, but I think we're going to actually be quite a variety. It can be everything from like sounding like Sex Pistols to Pink Floyd to The Cure to Judas Priest. It's going to be a variety of things. So thanks for listening if you are. And this guy here, I actually gave him a name. His name is Smith, and he is the sort of the mystical influence for the songwriting. He brings the ideas to us.
Is that Mr. Smith or just Smith?
Just Smith. Just
Okay.
Smith. And actually, Smith has a name actually, or a meaning. It means to be kind of creative and industrious. So if you look up the word Smith. So anyway, I named this dude Smith. So then the cores we've mentioned already throughout our talk here today, but just one more time, it's at freebpdcourse.com. And pretty much everything I've ever learned about borderline personality disorder, which is one of the most common, probably, but often unknown ailments that has to do with emotion regulation and disrupted brain development and disrupted connection and attachment in childhood, which leads to the issues later on. But I mean, even if you just get educated about this one issue, you would have a better understanding about probably all general anxiety disorders, all general depressive disorders, even the influence of like trauma and substance abuse on people's lives. Like a lot of mental health stuff overlaps. So like if you understand one issue really well, it kind of gives you an understanding of others. So yeah, it's all free. It'll be free indefinitely. There's an option to donate if you feel up to it and feel it's something possible for you. But yeah, thanks for checking it out. We have up almost 60 registrations. I'm hoping to, keep that registration number going and that it can generalize out. And even after we're done making these videos, the registrations will continue.
That's great. Thanks for that. And I look forward to our next conversation in about a week, if all goes according to plan.
Sounds good.
See you then.